My guest today is filmmaker Maya Forbes. In this interview, we talk about her debut film that she wrote and directed called Infinitely Polar Bear. My guest today is Maya Forbes. She's a writer and director and has her first feature film out called Infinitely Polar Bear, and that releases in June. Welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you so much for having me, and hello to Cambridge, where I was born.
You were born in Cambridge?
Yes, I was born in Cambridge at Mount Auburn Hospital. I just want to say hello to Cambridge, my hometown. I love you.
So tell me, the title of the film is very, very interesting. Infinitely Polar Bear. I sat there and I thought, what does it mean?
Infinitely Polar Bear is a title that was actually given to me by my father, who the film is about. When I was in college, my father, who was manic depressive, was having a manic episode, and my sister and I took him to McLean Hospital in Belmont, Massachusetts, because we felt like he was on the edge and probably needed to, as he called it, a tune-up at the hospital. And as he was in an agreeable manic state, and he was filling out his intake form, and it said, "Have you ever been diagnosed with a mental illness? If so, what was it? Was it bipolar, schizophrenia, other?" And he circled other, and he wrote Infinitely Polar Bear. So it was his self-diagnosis.
Did you ever ask him what that meant?
I knew what it meant. It just meant he was, it was his twist on bipolar. He never really he liked the term manic depressive for himself, and he never really embraced bipolar because he thought it sounded like a bear, but so he made it his own, Infinitely Polar Bear. That's what he was.
So this is a very moving and compassionate film that looks at people with mental health, which still has a lot of stigma here and outside of the U.S. What prompted you to make this film that is so personal, so intimate, because you are putting out your story out there, the story of your dad, the story of your African-American mother, and how she wanted to get a better life for you and your sister, China Forbes, who was part of Pink Martini, and then how your father takes care of the two of you when you were in your teens, and how embarrassed you were having him around because you thought he was not very cool. Why did you want to make this movie?
Well, my father died in 1998. I was very close to him. He was, as you see in the film, he was a difficult person, but he had many wonderful qualities too. And when I have two little girls, and when they turned 7 and 5, which is the age that my sister and I were when our father had a breakdown and went into the hospital, and our lives really changed. Our parents separated, everything kind of changed at that point. Seeing my own little girls that age, how vulnerable they were, but also in some ways how tough they were too, even at that young age, sort of catapulted me back into my memories. And I started telling my daughters bedtime stories about my father, and then I started telling them the bedtime stories that he had told me, just because I wanted them to know who he was. And it just started me reflecting on parenting and my childhood and the way we're told. I felt like all around me the culture was saying about children that they couldn't really handle complicated situations. They couldn't walk outside by themselves. They had to be protected from all kinds of things. And I was thinking about how I wasn't protected from a lot of difficult things, but how formative that had been in many ways positive, and even in the ways that I struggled because I wasn't protected from some things that caused me to engage in life with on a long journey of figuring out who I was, what my emotions meant to me, what it meant to why was I self-reliant, why was I confident, what had my parents given me, what things would I do differently than my parents. So anyway, all of that led me to writing this film.
Did it make you a better parent?
I think it did make me a better parent because I believe that it's very important for children to express themselves, which is something that my parents encouraged. To me and my sister, in the film, the girls express themselves sometimes in ways that the parents really probably aren't that excited about, but we were encouraged to express ourselves. No one ever said, don't express yourself. So I think my parents also gave me us a lot of room for play. And these are things that I think are really, really important. I've tried to step out of the way with my children and let them engage with the world in their own way. I mean, I guess I subscribe a bit to, I subscribe to benign neglect a bit. And I think it's important to kind of leave kids alone to figure things out for themselves. And I also don't think that they need to be protected. I certainly didn't feel that the need to protect them from the stories about my father and his mental illness. I mean, that's part of our family. That's who he was. That's a fact of life. I don't think there's any reason why children can't understand that.
So you actually, like I said, started off by saying you paint the mentally ill in a very compassionate way, and you show that kids have the ability to deal with it. Yes. And it's been proven that one of the strategies for mentally ill patients to recover is family support.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that, but I lived it.
Yeah, so family, being part of the family. So as I was watching the film, you could see Mark Ruffalo. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Mark Ruffalo, how he struggles with being a good father, and you see the manic creative energy. Your dad was a creative sort, and he was also a photographer, was he not?
Yes. My father was very creative, and I think, and a wonderful photographer. He was always either shooting Super 8 film or taking pictures. He had many cameras, Polaroids. He sort of, his home away from home was this place called Ferranti Deghi, which is no longer there, but was on Mass Ave and Harvard Square. He loved that store where he got all of his film developed and bought cameras. So I think because he was such a creative person, people often thought he was going to pull his life together and get a job, and a good career, and those weren't things that a career with any pressure, I now realize, was not something that was really realistic for him, because he really couldn't handle very much pressure. But what my mother understood was that he did need family support. He needed a routine, and he needed some grounding, which is why when she went away and left us in his care, I think she felt it was a risk, but she felt that was going to be a very positive thing for him. It was also just she was doing these things by necessity, but that was something he craved. He needed somebody else to take care of, and that did prove to be the most successful period of his life in terms of maintaining his stability, was the period where he took care of me and my sister.
And during the 70s, he took pictures of some drama company in Boston that showed up in Life magazine.
Yeah, so my mother, for a time, my parents were involved in the Theater Company of Boston, which was a theater company that where my mother was a producer there. The director was a brilliant director named David Wheeler, and they had wonderful actors like Al Pacino and John Cazale. And so my father took during the rehearsals for Richard III, which is I know. I was going to say, which is a play my mother produced, Richard III with Al Pacino, in an old church. I think it was quite Gothic, and had a great atmosphere. But anyway, during that time, my father took some really amazing photographs of Al Pacino, and I think turned up in Life magazine.
The reason I asked about these pictures and your father being a photographer is that's what aided you, from what I've read, you and Mark Ruffalo, in recreating your dad's character and in recreating that atmosphere that you have captured in the film. Yes. How did you get to cast Mark as your dad in this film? Was he the person you had in mind? Were there other folks that you were considering?
During the writing of the film, I didn't really think about any actor in particular. I really kind of tried to focus on the real people, because I was trying not to lead myself in any particular direction, but I was trying to stay true to the truth. And then when I had finished and I was thinking about who could play this part, Mark's performance in You Can Count on Me is one that I just think is a brilliant and soulful portrayal of a troubled guy, and that it just felt so true to me, that performance. So when the script went to Mark, he really responded to it. We met to discuss it, and we were just very much on the same page in that we wanted it to be funny. I really didn't want to make a heavy, depressing film about these issues. I wanted to make a moving and funny film that was also felt very alive and had a lot of energy. We just clicked. And I also wanted to make, because it's such a personal film, I wanted to make sure that whoever I was having played these parts of Cam and Maggie, who are, you know, my father and my mother, that they were people that I would be very happy to go on this very personal journey with. That brought me towards Mark and Zoe. I was so happy that both of them were eager to play these parts, because once I met with them, we just really, we clicked on a personal level too.
Your mother, what kind of input did she give when you were writing the film, the script? And after you made the film, after she saw the film, what was her reaction? Because Zoe Saldana plays your mother in the film.
So my mother, this is a very wise thing that she did. She read the script, and she didn't really come at me with any agenda, because she probably understood that it would not be that well received, or at least it's very painful sharing that kind of stuff and then having your mother weigh in. But in writing the script, I saw what had happened through my mother's eyes, and I had a tremendous gratitude towards her. I feel like I understood much better, seeing from her point of view why she made the choices she made. It was very cathartic, and I think for her reading it, she also understood what my sister and I had gone through living with my dad, you know, and yes, it was okay. It turned out okay, but it was hard. There were a lot of really hard things, and he was, you know, a chaotic person. So we both sort of understood each other better. After reading the script, she gave me wonderful details about my father. She sort of sent me an email with all these little incidents that to her were very vivid memories, and some of them I did incorporate into the script. She was very collaborative with me on this project, and she loves the film. She feels like it's a sort of beautiful distillation of sort of the essential elements. I mean, as much as you can do in 88 minutes, boil down many, many years of your life, I sort of got to the core of it.
In 88 minutes, you captured a lot of your family. And your daughter, your real daughter, plays you in the film. She plays the older kid. As I was watching the film, I didn't know she was your daughter. I said, this kid understands this person so well, this father. And then when I went and read the backstory, I said, it makes sense because she's your daughter. Yes. What did she hear about your father from you? You said you were telling them bedtime stories.
Well, when I started telling my daughter's bedtime stories, I was telling them stories about sort of how I'd grown up. You know, it was not a culture of seatbelts or anything like that. We were always scrambling around in the car. And, you know, riding our bikes, and my father was taking us on, he'd like to take us off to look for, he'd like to take us to the beach, he'd like to take us to the forest. He really knew a lot about, he knew everything, every inch of Massachusetts. That's where he was born and raised, and he just knew every back road and shortcut, and so he always wanted to teach us all about where we were from. So I was telling them those stories, and then I was telling stories that he had then told me about, you know, why he'd been kicked out of Exeter, and why he'd been kicked out of Harvard, and where my parents met, and sort of just the bumpy road of life the life that he lived. And so my daughter knew a lot. I mean, I wasn't trying to hide anything from them. I wanted them to know the whole person, which was something in making the film, I was trying to bring to life this whole person, not just a person who's mentally ill, but, you know, a person with good and bad qualities who happens to have this, been diagnosed as a manic depressive, and with the struggles he had, especially in our culture at that time, because they did not know how to treat this disease. It was lots of experiments on him, which was hard to see, and that was all part of the story too.
Is that incident true about the Bentley and how his grandmother wanted to give the Bentley, and you two kids are like, at least he should have taken it. We could have had the money and we could have done something with it. Is that a true incident? So
the story of the Bentley is true, that my great-grandmother offered us the Bentley, and we were so angry at my father for not taking it. I mean, we were just outraged. It just seemed ridiculous that we wouldn't accept this car. And then, of course, as an adult, when I was working on this script and I was telling the story, I realized that was of course we should not have taken the Bentley. We could not afford the Bentley. It would have been ridiculous in our rent control department to have been parking the Bentley next to all of the, Hondas, or, it just didn't fit. It just made no sense. So that was a funny, just in looking back, seeing my father made a mature, a very mature, wise decision, which we just thought was absolutely ridiculous. We couldn't believe it.
Your father came from a well-off family. Why is it that his family didn't support your mother and the two kids?
Well, I think I would say that a number of things. That one was that my father, on one side of the family, they had always thought they would inherit a lot of money, and then it was left somewhere. The money was left somewhere else. So that was one blow. Everyone thought they were going to, this inheritance was going to be passed down to them, and then it wasn't. And then on the other side, I think they really didn't know how much to help, how much was going to be enabling of him. People thought that he would pull himself together and figure it out. And that's sort of an interesting thing. Another issue with addiction or mental illness is you don't want to damn someone with low expectations and say, we don't expect for you to ever do anything again with your life. That's not helpful. And then you also don't want to have high expectations that aren't realistic. So I think that's always a struggle too, where you're trying to find the balance of, we believe that you can be better, but we don't want to pressure you into, my sister and I always thought my dad could have some great career. That was not going to happen. So I think they were negotiating the expectations that were appropriate. And
this, at the end, became a family affair, because not only is your daughter acting, your husband is also part of the film. He's a producer, I guess. Your mother has given her input, and then your sister, China Forbes, who is part of Pink Martini, wrote a song for this film.
Yes. I mean, there was no way to make this movie without bringing the whole family. One of the reasons I wanted to make the film is because mental illness is a family disorder. When someone in the family either has an addiction problem or mental illness, it affects the whole family. And I guess I would say that creative projects like this are also a family affair. So my sister, who is in Pink Martinis, she's a singer of Pink Martinis, she's a wonderful performer. She wrote this wonderful song for the end credits of the film. It's called The Northern Line, and she plays the ukulele and she sings the song. And it's a very personal song about our family and our life, and I'm just thrilled that she wrote this beautiful song.
I should have asked this as my first question. The person who actually helped jumpstart this project is somebody that your kids and his kids hang out with.
Yes.
You know who I'm talking
Yes, I
about.
do.
So I want you to tell me that backstory of how he helped you. He's making a film called Star Wars.
Yes. So J.J. Abrams, who I know socially because our kids play together at the park and have since they were little, he said to me one day, we were at the park, and he said, "What are you working on?" And I said, I'm doing something different. I'm writing this personal film. And he said, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I'd love to see it when you're done." So I gave him the script, and he said, "I want to help you get this made." And it was just, as a first-time director, to have JJ saying, "I believe that she can do it," was hugely important, because it's hard to get people to give you the money to make your first film. I was saying it was going to be funny, but everyone was seeing it was about a heavy subject. Was I going to be successful in making it funny? They didn't know. So I think just the fact that he said, and then Mark Ruffalo and Zoe Saldana, they all felt like the script tells us that she knows what she's doing, that she knows how to achieve the tone that she's going for. So it's very helpful to have someone like him say that they believe you can do it.
The one person in your family that we haven't spoken about is your husband.
Yes.
Both of you are comedy writers, and I understand that you focus on character. You're very good at delineating characters, and he's good at one-liners. So tell me, how did you work on this project?
Well, he's better than just at one-liners, because he's also what he's great at. What he's great at is finding that one line that sums up a character. So sometimes I'll be writing a character, and I sort of have a handle on it, and then he'll give me this one line, and I'll say, that's who that is. So I just want to say he's very good at character too, but he's great with jokes. He's just funny. But he produced this film, and we have been creative partners for over 15 years, I think. We've been writing together. This one I wrote on my own because it was sort of so based on my memories. But he came up with some great lines, and he was there for the whole shoot. I mean, we are partners, and he also plays a small, fun, but very funny role in the movie. We were in the editing room the whole time together. We just we are creatively synced.
Growing up, did you think you would be in the film industry?
I did. I started writing plays when I was probably 8 years old because my parents were in theater, and I just always was drawn to writing. And I actually thought maybe I would write novels, but then as I got older, I still kept writing plays. I liked writing dialogue a lot. And then I was on the Harvard Lampoon, and I wrote a lot of comedy pieces, so I was always drawn towards comedy, but I like very real human comedy, intelligent comedy. So I went out to Hollywood right after I graduated from college, and I started writing, and I got a job at the Larry Sanders Show, and I wrote for that show. That was a great job, and I guess I just sort of got swept up in it.
And what is your next project? Now that this project is done, ready, it's born, the baby is out of the bag, it's over. What is your next project? I heard that you're going to be doing something with your sister.
Well, actually, I have something with my sister, but it's in the very early stages. But my husband and I have written a movie for Jack Black. It's based on a real life story about a man who came from Poland. He became a polka sensation in Pennsylvania. He wears these amazing rhinestone-covered suits and costumes. He's very flamboyant, and he also ran a Ponzi scheme. So it's sort of a real-life, true crime comedy about the American dream.
Maya, that film with Jack Black sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, Ponzi scheme and polka dancing. I would love to see Jack Black doing polka dancing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.